The stars were dying. Admiral Zixathera pressed her crystal hand against the cold window of her command ship and watched another world burn. The planet below had once been home to 3 billion people. Now it was nothing but ash and twisted metal. The enemy ships moved like hungry wolves across the dead world. They were called the Devourers, and they ate everything. Cities, forests, oceans, people, nothing was left behind. Just empty rock floating in space. Zixthara turned away from the window. Her people, the Veltari, were made of living crystal. They had ruled the stars for 1,000 years, but even they could not stop the Devourers. "Admiral, the last transport ships are ready to leave," said her aide. The young Veltari's voice shook with fear. "Good. Send them to the outer rim. Maybe they can find safety there." Zixthara knew it was a lie. There was no safety anywhere. The Devourers would find them all eventually. The war had lasted 3 years. 12 great civilizations had joined together to fight the machines. The Corvin could walk through walls. The Hive Moth were perfect soldiers. The Telmari could read minds. None of it mattered. The Devourers learned from every battle and became stronger. Zixthara remembered the first attack. The machines had appeared from deep space without warning. No one knew where they came from. They just arrived and started eating worlds. The galaxy's greatest minds tried to understand them. The machines seemed to want nothing but destruction. Every weapon the Alliance used, the Devourers adapted to. Energy beams, plasma cannons, gravity bombs. The machines found ways to defend against them all. Worse, they turned captured ships into more of themselves. The Alliance was not just losing. They were making the enemy stronger with every defeat. Far away from the dying worlds, Captain Jake Morrison was having a boring day. His ship, the New Frontier, was exploring empty space near the edge of the galaxy. Earth had only learned to travel faster than light 5 years ago. Humans were still new to space travel. Morrison was a tall man with brown hair and tired eyes. He had been in space for 2 years, looking for new worlds and new life. So far, he had found nothing but empty planets and distant stars. "Captain, we're picking up something strange," said his communications officer, Amy Stevens. She was young and excited about everything they found in space. "It looks like a distress signal." Morrison walked over to her station. "From who?" "We're the only ones out here." "That's what I thought too, sir. But this signal is definitely artificial, and it's coming from multiple sources." Morrison looked at the data on Amy's screen. She was right. There were dozens of signals coming from the same area of space. Something big was happening. "Change course. Let's go take a look," Morrison ordered. The New Frontier moved toward the signals. What they found changed everything. Ships filled the space ahead of them. But these were not human ships. They were strange and beautiful, made of materials Earth had never seen. Some looked like they were grown rather than built. Others seemed to be made of pure energy held in solid form. "My God," whispered Commander Lisa Rodriguez, Morrison's second in command. She was a smart woman who rarely showed surprise. "Are those alien ships?" "They have to be," Morrison said. "Amy, can you talk to them?" Amy worked at her controls for several minutes. "I'm trying, sir. They're using communication methods I've never seen before, but I think I can make a basic connection." The main screen flickered to life. A face appeared that was definitely not human. It was made of what looked like blue crystal, with eyes that glowed like small stars. The creature looked tired and sad. "Unknown vessel," the alien said in broken English. "You must flee. The Devourers come. All life will end." Morrison stepped forward. "I'm Captain Jake Morrison of the Earthship New Frontier. Who are you? What are the Devourers?" The crystal being's eyes widened. "Earth? You are from the small world near the rim? You must leave immediately. The Devourers destroy all life. Your species is too young to die." "We don't run from fights," Morrison said. "Tell us what's happening." Over the next few hours, the humans learned about the galaxy they had never known existed. Dozens of intelligent species lived among the stars. They had built a great alliance to explore and protect life. But the Devourers had come and destroyed it all. Dr. Susan Blake, the ship's scientist, studied the alien data with fascination. She was a small woman with bright eyes who loved solving puzzles. "Captain, these devourers are like nothing I've ever seen. They're machines, but they think and learn. Every time someone tries to fight them, they become harder to beat." "What other? Many are there?" Morrison asked. "Millions." Admiral Zixthera had come aboard the New Frontier to speak directly. "They grow stronger with every world they consume. We have lost everything." The alien refugees told their stories. The Corvan had been peaceful traders. The Hive Moth were proud warriors. The Telmari were wise teachers. All of them had been crushed by the same enemy. "What will you do now?" Morrison asked. "We will run," Zixthara said. "We will find empty worlds at the edge of the galaxy and hope the devourers never find us. It is all we can do." Morrison looked around at his crew. They were scared, but he could see something else in their eyes. Humans did not like bullies. They especially did not like bullies who picked on people who could not fight back. "What if there was another way?" Morrison said. "There is no other way," Zixthera replied. "We tried everything. The devourers cannot be stopped." "Maybe you tried everything you could think of," Morrison said with a small smile. "But you haven't tried the human way yet." The alien admiral stared at him. "You have one ship. The devourers have millions. What can you possibly do?" Morrison looked out at the refugee fleet. Thousands of beings who had lost everything they cared about. He thought about Earth, still unaware that death machines were eating the galaxy. He thought about his crew who had signed up to explore the stars, not fight wars. "I don't know yet," Morrison admitted. "But we'll figure something out. We always do." Dr. Blake stepped forward. "Captain, if we're going to study these devourers, we need to get close to them." "Are you crazy?" Commander Rodriguez asked. "They'll destroy us." "Maybe," Blake said. "Or maybe they've never seen anything like us before." The Admiral said they adapt to everything they fight. But they've never fought humans. Morrison made his decision. "We're not going back to Earth, not yet. We're going to shadow these devourers and learn everything we can about them." "That is suicide," Zixthera said. "Probably," Morrison agreed. "But if we're going to die anyway, we might as well make it count. Besides, humans are very hard to kill." The alien admiral looked at these strange creatures who seemed eager to fight an unwinnable war. She did not understand them. But for the first time in years, she felt something she had forgotten. Hope. 3 weeks had passed since the New Frontier started following the Devourer fleet. Captain Morrison's crew worked day and night to stay hidden while they watched the enemy machines. The aliens thought the humans were crazy. The humans were starting to think the same thing. Chief Engineer Tony Vasquez wiped sweat from his forehead as he stared at his computer screen. He was a short, stocky man who could fix anything. But this problem was bigger than a broken engine or a damaged power core. "Captain, you need to see this," Tony called out. His voice was excited but tired. Morrison hurried to the engineering section. "What did you find?" "These devourers talk to each other using quantum signals," Tony explained. "It's like a super-fast internet that connects every single machine. That's how they coordinate so well." "Can we listen in?" Morrison asked. Tony grinned. "Better than that, sir. I think we can hack into it." Commander Rodriguez looked doubtful. "How?" "The alien said these machines adapt to everything." "That's the beautiful part," Tony said. "They adapt to alien technology. But our computers work completely different from theirs. Human programming is messy and chaotic. Their systems can't figure out what we're doing." Dr. Blake joined them in the engineering bay. She had been studying the Devourer data for weeks without sleep. "Tony's right. These machines think in perfect patterns. Human logic doesn't make sense to them." "Show me," Morrison said. Tony brought up a display showing Devourer communication patterns. They looked like perfect geometric shapes flowing in orderly lines. Then he showed them human computer code. It looked like random chaos compared to the alien perfection. "See? They can't adapt to something they can't understand," Tony explained. "It's like trying to teach math to a tornado." While Tony worked on hacking the enemy communications, Dr. Blake made her own discovery. She had been studying pieces of destroyed devourer ships that the refugees had saved. "Captain, look at this." Blake called Morrison to her laboratory. "The aliens have been fighting these machines all wrong." She showed him a piece of devourer armor. It was smooth and black, like liquid. Metal frozen in place, this armor adapts to energy weapons. Lasers, plasma beams, particle cannons, it learns to deflect them all. But watch this. Blake picked up a simple steel ball bearing and threw it at the armor sample. The metal ball punched right through, leaving a clean hole. "What just happened?" Morrison asked. "The armor can't adapt to simple kinetic energy," Blake explained. "It's designed to handle complex energy patterns. But a chunk of metal flying fast? It has no defense against that." Morrison stared at the hole in the alien super armor. "You mean bullets would work?" "Bullets, railgun slugs, even rocks if they're moving fast enough," Blake confirmed. "The Devourers have never faced projectile weapons because most civilizations stopped using them thousands of years ago. But we haven't," Morrison said with a growing smile. "Exactly. We're primitive enough to still throw things at our enemies." The next breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Lieutenant Ben Carter was a Marine who had volunteered for the mission because he was bored. He was young, tough, and always looking for a fight. While the scientists worked on understanding the enemy, Carter studied them from a soldier's perspective. "Captain, these machines fight like robots," Carter reported. "They follow patterns, attack, adapt, advance, they never do anything unexpected." "What's your point, Lieutenant?" Morrison asked. "My point is they've never fought anyone who breaks." "The rules," Carter said. "Every species they've beaten fought them honor. Clean battles, proper tactics, following the rules of war." "And humans don't follow rules?" Commander Rodriguez asked. Carter grinned. "Ma'am, humans invented dirty fighting. We've been cheating in wars since we learned to pick up sticks." Dr. Blake looked up from her research. "Ben might be onto something. I've been analyzing devourer psychology. They're not just machines. They used to be a living species that turned themselves into computers." "What does that mean?" Morrison asked. "It means they still think like the species they used to be." Blake explained. "They have emotions, fears, pride. They can be confused, frustrated, even scared." "Scared of what?" Rodriguez asked. "Of things that don't make sense," Blake said. "Their original species must have been very logical, very orderly. Chaos terrifies them." Morrison looked around at his crew. Tony with his chaotic engineering solutions. Blake with her wild scientific theories. Carter with his love of breaking rules. They were about as chaotic as humans came. "We need to test these theories," Morrison decided. "But first we need to talk to our alien friends." Admiral Zixathera listened to the human discoveries with growing amazement. The crystal being had lived for over 500 years and thought she understood warfare. But these humans saw things no one else had noticed. "You want to attack them with primitive weapons?" she asked. "Not attack," Morrison corrected. "Test. We need to know if our theories are right." "And if you're wrong?" "Then we'll be dead," Morrison said simply. "But if we're right, maybe we can give you your galaxy back." The first test came when Tony successfully hacked into a small Devourer scout ship. The machine's systems went crazy trying to understand the human virus he had planted. The ship started, flying in circles, sending confused signals to its fleet. "It's working," Tony laughed. "The poor thing can't figure out what's happening to it." The second test was more dangerous. Lieutenant Carter led a small team aboard a disabled Devourer ship using stealth technology borrowed from the aliens. What they found inside changed everything. "Captain, you're not going to believe this," Carter radioed back. "These machines are afraid." "Afraid of what?" "Of dying. They've got backup systems for their backup systems. They're terrified of being destroyed." Dr. Blake processed this information quickly. That makes sense. If they used to be a living species, they'd still have survival instincts, but those instincts would be programmed into their computer brains, which means they can panic, Morrison realized. The final piece of the puzzle came when Communications Officer Amy Stevens managed to make contact with Earth. The message would take months to travel across space, but help was coming, not that they could wait that long. "Captain, I've been thinking," Amy said. "If we can hack their communications and make them panic, What happens to a fleet that big when it gets confused? Morrison smiled. For the first time since meeting the aliens, he felt like they might actually have a chance. They crash into each other, he said. The plan was insane. It was dangerous. It broke every rule of proper warfare. The aliens thought the humans had lost their minds. But as Captain Morrison looked at his crew preparing for their first real battle against impossible odds, he felt something he hadn't expected. He felt confident. After all, humans had been winning impossible fights for thousands of years. This was just another Tuesday. 6 months had passed since the new frontier first met the alien refugees. What started as one human ship had grown into something the galaxy had never seen before. Captain Morrison stood in the command center of their hidden base, built inside a dead asteroid field that used to be a planet. The base buzzed with activity. Humans worked alongside aliens, building new weapons and planning attacks. The refugees had stopped running. For the first time in years, they were fighting back. "Captain, the morning briefing is ready," Commander Rodriguez said. She looked tired, but happy. Leading a rebellion was hard work, but it felt good to be winning for once. Morrison walked into the main briefing room. Representatives from 6 different alien species sat around a table with his senior officers. A few months ago, this meeting would have been impossible. Now it felt normal. "What's our status?" Morrison asked. Tony Vasquez spoke first. "The virus is working better than we hoped, sir. Every time we plant it in their systems, the devourers get more confused. They're starting to make mistakes." Dr. Blake nodded in agreement. "The psychological effects are even stronger than the technical ones. The machines are developing something like paranoia. They're questioning their own decisions." "How? Is that possible?" asked Ether Wynn, the Veltari scientist who had become Blake's research partner. The crystal being was brilliant, but human psychology still confused her. "Fear is contagious," Blake explained. "When one machine starts doubting itself, it spreads to others through their network. They're accidentally infecting themselves with anxiety." Lieutenant Carter, now promoted to major, grinned at the alien officers. "Fear makes you stupid. And stupid enemies are dead enemies." The first real victory had come 3 weeks earlier in the Helios Nebula. Commander Rodriguez had led a mixed fleet of human and alien ships against a devourer mining operation. The attack had been planned using human guerrilla tactics that the aliens found disturbing. "Hit-and-run attacks are dishonorable," the Corvan commander had complained before the mission. "Honor doesn't win wars," Rodriguez had replied. "Results do." The attack had been perfect. The combined fleet struck fast, destroyed 3 massive harvester ships, and vanished back into the nebula's electrical storms before the devourers could respond. It was the first time in the war that the machines had lost ships without destroying their attackers. More importantly, the victory had been broadcast across the galaxy. Surviving alien colonies learned that the unstoppable devourers could be stopped. Volunteer ships began arriving at the hidden base every day. "How many ships do we have now?" Morrison asked. 230 active vessels, Rodriguez reported, with more arriving every week. "The word is spreading, Captain. Hope is spreading." The success was changing the aliens in ways Morrison hadn't expected. Species that had followed the same battle tactics for thousands of years were learning to think like humans. They were learning to cheat. Major Carter had established the first integrated special forces unit. Human soldiers trained alongside alien warriors, teaching them techniques that proper civilizations had forgotten. The results were terrifying for their enemies. The Corvan phase-walking ability combined with human stealth tactics is incredibly effective, Carter reported. They can walk through walls, plant explosives, and disappear before anyone knows they were there. "What about the hive moth?" Morrison asked. "Natural-born killers, sir. They just needed someone to teach them to think dirty. Now they're running sabotage missions that would make our best special forces proud." The Veltari had surprised everyone. Their ability to manipulate crystal and metal at the molecular level, combined with human demolitions knowledge, made them perfect saboteurs. They could make enemy ships fall apart from the inside without leaving any evidence. Dr. Blake had made another crucial discovery while studying captured devourer technology. "Captain, I figured out why they're so afraid of our chaos algorithms." "Explain," Morrison said. The species they used to be must have been completely logical. When they turned themselves into machines, they kept that trait. But logic requires predictable inputs. Our random human thinking breaks their decision-making process. Like dividing by zero, Tony added. Their computers literally don't know how to handle it. The psychological warfare was working better than anyone had hoped. Intercepted Devourer communications showed growing confusion in their ranks. For the first time since the war began, the machines were retreating from some systems instead of advancing. Amy Stevens had been monitoring their communications around the clock. Captain, they're arguing with each other. Different groups of Devourers are disagreeing about strategy. Machines don't argue, Etherwind said in confusion. These ones do, Amy replied, because they used to be people. And people argue when they're scared and confused. The tide was turning, but Morrison knew they needed a big victory to prove that the Devourers could be beaten. The opportunity came when their scouts discovered a massive Devourer construction project in the Vega system. They're building something huge, Major Carter reported. Our spies say it's some kind of superweapon designed to crack planets open like eggs. How long until it's finished? Morrison asked. 2 weeks, maybe 3. Morrison looked around the room at his mixed crew of humans and aliens. 6 months ago, most of these beings had never heard of Earth. Now they were risking their lives following human battle plans that made no sense to anyone except other humans. We hit them before they finish, Morrison decided. All ships, maximum effort. Sir, that's their most heavily defended position, Rodriguez warned. We'll be outnumbered 50-1. Good, Morrison said with a smile that made the aliens nervous. They won't expect us to be that stupid. Admiral Zixathera had been quiet during the briefing, but now she spoke up. Captain Morrison, my people have a saying. Only the desperate fight impossible battles. What's your point, Admiral? We are no longer desperate, she said. But you humans fight impossible battles anyway. Why? Morrison thought about the question. Around him, his crew prepared for another battle they had no right to win. Humans who had left Earth to explore the stars, now fighting a war for people they had just met. Because someone has to, he said simply. And impossible battles are the only ones worth fighting. The alien admiral stared at him for a long moment. Then she did something Morrison had never seen a Veltari do before. She smiled. Then let us go make the impossible happen again. 2 days later, the combined fleet left the asteroid base. 230 ships carrying humans and aliens who had learned to think like humans. They were heading toward a battle that should have been suicide. But as Captain Morrison watched the stars ahead of them, he felt the same confidence he always felt before a fight. After all, humans had been making the impossible look easy for their entire history. This was just another day at the office. 1 year after the new frontier had arrived in alien space, Captain Morrison stood on the bridge of his new flagship. The ship was called the Defiance, and it was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human engineering mixed with alien technology, in ways that shouldn't have worked but somehow did. Morrison was no longer just a captain. The reformed Galactic Council had made him an admiral, though he still preferred his old rank. Around him, the bridge crew was half human and half alien. They worked together like they had been born to it. Admiral, all fleet commanders are ready, Commander Rodriguez reported. She now commanded her own ship but still served as Morrison's, second in command for major operations. The Vega system lay ahead of them. Intelligence reports said the Devourers had almost finished building their planet-cracking weapon. If it became operational, whole worlds could be destroyed in minutes instead of hours. How many ships do we have? Morrison asked. 312, Rodriguez replied. The Devourers have over 15,000 in the system. Good odds, Morrison said, making several aliens look at him strangely. Humans had a very different idea of what made good odds. Dr. Blake's voice came over the communication system from her laboratory ship. Admiral, the quantum virus is ready for wide deployment. We can hit every Devourer ship in the galaxy at the same time. The virus had evolved far beyond Tony's original hack. Now it carried something much more dangerous than computer code. It carried human military history, human psychology profiles, and detailed records of every impossible victory humans had ever achieved. "What exactly will it do to them?" asked Admiral Zixathara. The crystal being now commanded a joint fleet of Veltari and human ships. "It will teach them to think like humans," Blake explained. "And humans think about warfare very differently than machines do." Major Carter's special forces had grown into a galaxy-wide network of mixed human and alien teams. They had been conducting raids for months, hitting Devourer supply lines and command centers. Each attack followed the same pattern: strike hard, fade away, hit somewhere else before the enemy could respond. "Carter, what's the status of the infiltration teams?" Morrison asked. "All teams are in position, sir." Carter's voice crackled over the radio. "We've got people inside 12 different systems. When you give the word, we'll light up their rear areas like a Christmas tree." The aliens still didn't understand human holidays, but they had learned that when Carter compared something to Christmas, it usually involved large explosions. Amy Stevens had been promoted to head of intelligence operations. Her job was to listen to Devourer communications and tell the fleet commanders what the enemy was thinking. What she heard was music to human ears. "Admiral, they're panicking," Amy reported. "The virus has been spreading through their network for weeks. Different groups of Devourers are arguing about strategy. Some want to retreat, others want to attack everything at once." "Arguing machines," Etherwind mused from her science station. "A year ago I would have said it was impossible." "Nothing's impossible," Morrison replied. "Just improbable. And humans love improbable." The battle began at 800 hours ship time. But it didn't start the way anyone expected. Instead of charging at the enemy fleet, Morrison's ships scattered in 12 different directions. "Sir, the fleet is breaking formation," warned a nervous Corvin commander. "That's the plan," Morrison said calmly. "Rule number 1 of human warfare: never do what the enemy expects." While the main Devourer fleet tried to figure out which group of ships to chase, Carter's special forces struck at targets across the galaxy. Supply depots exploded. Command centers went dark. Communication relays turned into scrap metal. But the real attack was invisible. Dr. Blake's quantum virus spread through the Devourer network like wildfire, carrying human chaos into every machine mind it touched. The effect was immediate and devastating. Devourer ships began receiving contradictory orders. Some were told to attack, others were told to defend. Still others were told to retreat. The perfect coordination that had made them unstoppable collapsed into confusion. "They don't know what to do," Amy laughed as she monitored their communications. "Half of them are trying to follow standard battle plans, and the other half are trying to use human tactics they don't understand." Morrison watched the tactical display as 15,000 enemy ships began bumping into each other. Some fired on their own allies by mistake. Others flew in circles, unable to decide which target to engage. It was chaos, and chaos was humanity's best friend. "All units begin Phase 2, Morrison ordered. The scattered human and alien ships regrouped and began their real attack. But instead of fighting like a normal fleet, they used tactics borrowed from human military history. Some ships acted like submarines hiding in asteroid fields and attacking from ambush. Others behaved like fighter planes, making quick strikes and flying away. Still others copied ancient cavalry charges, hitting hard and fast at weak points in the enemy formation. The Devourers had adapted to fight every known form of space warfare. But they had never seen anything like this. How do you adapt to an enemy that changes tactics every few minutes? Tony's engineering teams had retrofitted the Allied ships with weapons the galaxy had forgotten. Railguns that fired simple chunks of metal at incredible speeds. Missile launchers loaded with nuclear warheads. Even old-fashioned kinetic kill, vehicles that were just big rocks with rocket motors. The Devourer adaptive armor, designed to handle sophisticated energy weapons, had no defense against primitive projectiles. Ships that had survived battles with the galaxy's most advanced weapons were destroyed by technology that humans had invented thousands of years ago. "This is insane," Admiral Zixathara said as she watched her crystal ships firing what were essentially giant bullets at enemy vessels. "Insanity is just another word for tactics the enemy doesn't understand," Morrison replied. The turning point came when the virus reached the Devourer superweapon itself. The massive construction, designed by perfect machine logic, suddenly found its computer brain filled with human military doctrine. The weapon's targeting system began analyzing the tactical situation using human strategic thinking. The result was predictable. The superweapon decided that the biggest threat in the system was the Devourer fleet itself. It turned its planet-cracking beam on the enemy ships and opened fire. "Did that thing just shoot its own fleet?" Carter asked over the radio. "Yep," Morrison said. "Turns out even their own weapons can't figure them out once they start thinking like humans." The battle lasted 6 hours. When it was over, the Devourer fleet was scattered wreckage floating in space. The superweapon had destroyed itself in confusion, and the human-led alliance had won their first major victory. But Morrison knew this was just the beginning. Across the galaxy, other Devourer fleets were receiving the virus. Soon every machine in their network would be infected with human chaos. "What's our next move, Admiral?" Rodriguez asked. Morrison looked at the tactical display showing Devourer positions throughout the galaxy. Red dots marked enemy fleets that had terrified civilizations for years. But now those red dots looked different to him. They looked like targets. "We finished the job," Morrison said simply. "Time to teach the galaxy what humans do to bullies." The age of Devourer dominance was ending. The age of human-led chaos was just beginning. 2 years after Captain Jake Morrison had first heard an alien distress signal, he stood in the Great Hall of New Geneva Station. The massive space station had been built from the wreckage of Devourer ships, turning the enemy's own metal into a symbol of galactic unity. Morrison wore the uniform of a galactic admiral now, though he still felt like a simple ship captain from Earth. Around him, representatives from dozens of species gathered for the most important ceremony in galactic history. Today they would sign the Charter of Unity, officially welcoming humanity into the galactic community. "Hard to believe it's over," Commander Rodriguez said as she joined him at the observation window. She now commanded the entire human fleet, but still preferred to stand beside her old captain during important moments. "Is it over?" Morrison asked, watching the construction ships outside building new vessels. These ships were different from anything that had come before. They combined human engineering with alien science in ways that created something entirely new. "The Devourers are finished," Rodriguez confirmed. "The last of their ships surrendered 3 months ago. Some are asking to be converted back to biological forms. Others want to serve the galaxy as peaceful machines." Morrison nodded. The final victory had come not through destruction, but through something the galaxy had forgotten was possible. The Chaos virus had done more than confuse the enemy machines. It had given them back their ability to choose. Dr. Susan Blake approached them, carrying a datapad filled with reports. She had been elected to head the new Galactic Research Institute, where her studies of human unpredictability were being applied to everything from medicine to terraforming. "Admiral, the final casualty reports are in," Blake said. "We lost fewer than 10,000 beings in the entire war. The Devourers lost no one." "How is that possible?" Rodriguez asked. "Because we didn't destroy them," Blake explained. "We fixed them. The virus didn't just cause chaos. It restored their original personalities, the ones they had before they became machines. Most of them remembered what it was like to be alive." Morrison smiled at the irony. Humans had been brought into a war to destroy an enemy. Instead, they had saved them. It was a very human way to win a fight. Major Ben Carter walked up to their group, now wearing the uniform of a Galactic Special Forces general. His job was training the first generation of integrated military units, teaching alien soldiers that sometimes the best strategy was to have no strategy at all. "Admiral, the new recruits are asking about human military history again," Carter reported with a grin. "They want to understand how we won so many impossible battles." "What did you tell them?" Morrison asked. "The truth, that humans don't fight to win. We fight because it's the right thing to do. Winning just happens to be a side effect." The ceremony began with speeches from alien leaders who had once thought their civilizations were doomed. Admiral Zig Sathara spoke for the Veltari. describing how humans had taught them that perfect order was not always perfect. Before the humans came, the crystal being said, we believed that chaos was the enemy of progress. Now we understand that chaos is the source of creativity, innovation, and hope. The Corvin representative talked about how human guerrilla tactics had revolutionized their understanding of warfare. The hive moth praised human teamwork that somehow functioned despite being completely disorganized. Each species had learned something different from their human allies. When it was Morrison's turn to speak, he kept it simple. 2 years ago, my crew was exploring empty space looking for new worlds, he said. We found something better. We found new friends. And we learned that the best way to explore the universe is together. The signing ceremony was interrupted by an urgent message from Earth. Amy Stevens, now head of Galactic Communications, had been in contact with humanity's home world throughout the war. The news she brought made everyone smile. Admiral, Earth's first official diplomatic ships will arrive next month, Amy announced. They're bringing colonists, scientists, and engineers. Earth wants to help rebuild the galaxy. Morrison looked around at the alien delegates. 2 years ago, most of them had never heard of humanity. Now they were eager to meet more humans and learn from their chaotic way of thinking. The real celebration began after the official ceremony ended. In the lower levels of the station, human sailors mixed with alien crews in bars that served drinks from a dozen different worlds. Humans taught aliens to play poker and learned alien games that had no rules humans could understand. Dr. Blake found Morrison in one of the quieter observation lounges, watching the stars through the transparent aluminum windows. Any regrets? She asked. Morrison thought about the question. His crew had volunteered for a simple exploration mission and ended up fighting a galactic war. They had lost their peaceful life among the stars but gained something much more valuable. None, he said finally. We came out here to find new life and new civilizations. Mission accomplished. What happens now? Blake asked. Now we get back to exploring, Morrison replied. Except this time we're not doing it alone. Outside the station, construction continued on the new exploration fleets. Human ships would carry mixed crews of humans and aliens to parts of the galaxy that had been too dangerous to visit during the war. The universe was a big place and they had barely scratched the surface. Tony Vasquez joined them at the window, carrying a drink that glowed softly blue. Admiral, the engineering teams want to know if you're ready for the next mission. What mission? Morrison asked. Exploring the galaxy beyond the rim, Tony explained. The aliens say there are whole civilizations out there that we've never contacted. Some of them might need help. Morrison smiled. Humans had a talent for finding people who needed help. It seemed like the universe was full of impossible situations that required human solutions. When do we leave? He asked. Whenever you're ready, sir, Tony replied. Morrison looked around at his friends, both human and alien. They had started as explorers, become warriors, and ended up as teachers. Now they were ready to be explorers again. Tomorrow, Morrison decided. The universe isn't going to explore itself. Admiral Zixthera approached their group, overhearing the conversation. Admiral Morrison, the Galactic Council has a request. What kind of request? They want human advisors assigned to every exploration fleet, she explained. It seems that whenever the galaxy encounters something impossible, we need humans to make it possible. Morrison laughed. It was true. Humans had a gift for turning impossible situations into routine problems. They approached every challenge the same way. Figure out what everyone else had tried, then do something completely different. We'll be happy to help, Morrison said, but I have one condition. Name it. No more wars, Morrison said firmly. From now on, when we find new civilizations, we talk to them first. Fighting is what we do when talking fails. Agreed, Zixthera said. Though knowing humans, you'll probably find a way to make peace more exciting than war. As the celebration continued around them, Morrison looked out at the stars with satisfaction. Humanity had come to the galaxy as curious explorers, They had become its protectors when protection was needed. Now they would be its teachers, showing other species that impossible was just another word for interesting. The galaxy was safe, growing, and full of infinite possibilities. It was exactly the kind of place humans belonged.